Speaking of finishing strong, we've got one more segment left for this week on Bang the Book Radio. That is this week's version of the Odds Report with Brent from DSI Sportsbook. Some sharp action for the bowl games and some things going on here for Week 17 of the NFL. So here is this week's version of the Odds Report with Brent from DSI Sportsbook. All right, I'm joined now by Brent, the head risk manager at DSI Sportsbook for this week's version of the Odds Report. Brent, how's it going today, man?
Wonderfully well. Beautiful and sunny down here in Costa Rica, and actually enjoying the bowl season so far. I think I touched on last week how it's nice in that we get real good action on these games simply because, the nature of one game after another. People can load up if they want on an early game and then load up on a later game as well. So it makes for real good action for us, and of course, staying busy is always good.
All right, so we want to remind our listeners of some sharp action we already talked about, and then we'll discuss some new sharp action as we go throughout the show here. Reminding you that Iowa State plus 3.5 took money in the Alamo Bowl. We touched last week, Brent, on how Oklahoma and Alabama saw sharp money on the under 81. This total has dropped into the 77 range now. What's the overall story there for the Orange Bowl on Saturday night?
Yeah, it's obviously going to be a great game. Those two games are going to be wonderful for us in terms of action. Right now, in terms of, I'm really split and really doing quite well in terms of this game. In terms of both my wager counts and my action in terms of the sides. I do have a slight count favoring Alabama, but nothing dramatic at all. If you look at the screen in terms of where this number opened up and where it is now, is Alabama 13.5 and it's basically 14, or there's some 14 dog 15s out there as well. So I think market-wide you can kind of read into that and just get an indication that it's pretty much split across the board, probably at almost every sports book in terms of the spread here. We're sitting Alabama minus 14. Like I said, just slightly more bets on Alabama. My money's pretty much dead even. My count on the total is pretty much even as well. It's just I'm starting to get a little bit of over money as well, and that's just public money, which you kind of tend to expect in a game like this. There was, as we said, sharp action on this one earlier in the week earlier in the month, I could say, under 81. But everything other than that, there's no sharp money on the spread, just the total action that we saw, and I just think the public's probably going to claw back on the over.
All right, so we'll move to the other semifinal game here. This one in the Cotton Bowl. This one's actually earlier, but later by rotation number, so we'll touch on it second here. Notre Dame and Clemson. Previously mentioned that Clemson had gotten some sharper interest at the minus 11. Now we're 12.5 or 13 out there in the market. Brent, where are you guys, and what's the story on this one?
Yeah, I'm sitting at 13. There are some 13, 12.5 and 13 dog 15, which is where I'm at right now. I don't like, I'm not crazy about using a dog 15 and moving the juice around on a number like 13, especially in college football. But just kind of sticking to what the market is right now. And I do prefer to be on the number 13 just in terms of, taking teasers down and stuff like that. And the indication, too, is that Clemson, earlier on was the sharp side. And also my wager count indicates that, where this line came from and where it's going to, you see this line open around 11 and we got hit by sharp money at that 11. So we're up to 13 right now, or 12.5 as you touched on. But the wager count is strongly the other way. I've got a wager count almost 3-1 favoring Notre Dame. So it's one of those games that sets up as a sharp and public split, if you will. And, obviously we want to be sitting on the sharp side as well. So I don't mind if we get more money on Alabama and come kickoff, we actually need Clemson. So I'm kind of leaning that way, and that's why I'm sticking on the 13. Also, like I said, with the teasers and stuff like that, you want to, I'd rather hang on number 13 as well, just for those, 7 and 6.5 pointers.
All right, so move to some new sharp action we've got for Monday afternoon here, New Year's Eve day. Game 263-264, Missouri, Oklahoma State in the Liberty Bowl. Again, this is new sharp action. What are we looking at here, Brent?
Yeah, this is one of those games where, the line really hasn't moved a whole lot. Missouri -9, and that's basically where the sharp money came in on Oklahoma State, taking the dog plus the 9. My wager count as well is pretty much even, but, I think this is one of those things that we're out in the market. I think you're probably seeing Missouri money out there. The bet that came in on Oklahoma State plus the 9 wasn't, it came in here and maybe just hasn't been hit market wide. Maybe they're waiting to set this number up, seeing if it goes back to 9.5 where it opened. And again, I mean, Oklahoma, they are just sitting there at 6-6, and you got Missouri, who's ranked in the top 25, and they got Missouri's got that win over Florida. So I think there's kind of like more of an attraction to them, and I think my count may start going that way. Missouri closed strong on the season. Oklahoma State didn't close well at all. I think they lost 3 of their last 4 as they close out the season. But I mean, this conference thing as well is, Oklahoma State's in a real tough conference. They finished 6-6, which is just barely gets them into a bowl, and here they are playing like number 23 ranked team in the nation with Missouri. But I just think this is one of those things where out in the market, I think Missouri's probably getting public money. I think people look too much into the records of Oklahoma State at 6-6, but I mean, it's a tough conference. They beat Texas and they beat West Virginia as well. So they got some decent wins, and I'm my feeling is that there's some kind of push pull out in the market, and that public money is probably pushing Missouri, even though the Sharps came in on the other side.
All right, we talked about previous sharp action in the Holiday Bowl. That was Northwestern and Utah. That was on Utah in the 6.5 range out there. So we'll move on to New Year's Day, January 1st here. The Fiesta Bowl game, 273, 274, LSU and Central Florida. Some new sharp action to discuss in this game.
Yeah, this one came on the total here, Adam. That money came in on the over 54.5. I mean, you look at LSU, and they've been in a whole lot of low-scoring games. It seems in Central Florida is the counter of that. We're sitting at 55.5 right now, so I haven't been. It is. We're quite a ways out here in terms of this game. Still about a week away. But the number is kind of just ticking up to 55.5. Again, sharp money came in on the over 54.5. My count-wise, just, generally speaking, you expect the public to bet these games over in most bowl games as they do, and that's kind of the way my count is as well, just 2-1. So I get this feeling this number might, tick up. You might see like a 56 or a 56.5 and just see if any sharps come back the other way. The public, like I said, they've kind of, given an indication that they're going to play the over on this one. So I expect this one, it's interesting this season with the bowls. There's been like initial line movement, and then not a whole lot of movement during the week. Once the initial moves come up, I think the sharps kind of maybe didn't find a whole lot of value, this season in bowls. Not a whole lot of back and forth. So I think game day you're probably going to see what we've seen so far is just a whole lot of movement on these games, and this number I kind of expect to creep up, and it might get to a number where sharps come back the other way. But other than that, I would see this number ticking up. I mean, I'm definitely could probably be sitting at 56 right now myself.
Well, one of the tough things is, so many guys sitting out bowl games here, and then even today in the Independence Bowl, Raquel Armstead for Temple, a game day decision, not playing. A lot of that going on here this year too. So it is a little bit tough to put your money out there well in advance and then, wind up with a bad number or a bad spot because somebody decided not to play in that bowl game. While we're right there in the area, Brent, just for my own curiosity as a Buckeyes fan, game 275, 276, how one-sided is the count on Ohio State for the Rose Bowl?
How one-sided? Dramatically? How's that? Is that a good choice of words? Yeah, my count right now is about 6-1 favoring Ohio State. Everyone's looking on the market pretty much 6.5 out there. I'm using 6.5 minus 15 right now. I know some books have touched on the 7, but using heavy juice towards the dog. So right now I'm just putting a little extra juice on Ohio State. This number did open at 5, so it's already moved quite a bit all the way through 6 to 6.5. Total wise, open 58.5. We're sitting 57.5, so not a substantial move on the total. I've just got slightly more bets on the under actually, which is kind of a bit of a surprise when you get into these bowl games. But yeah, the main thing is just on the side. It's like all one way favoring Ohio State, and I think you do see a general trend. I think in terms of these big conferences like this going against the Pac-12. Pac-12 just doesn't get a whole lot of support in these bowls.
Well, and we previously talked about sharp action for the Sugar Bowl. That was on Georgia, minus 10.5, and that number in the 12.5, 13 range out there in the market. So we'll transition over to the NFL side here for Week 17. Lots of sharp action to touch on. And, this is a pretty dangerous week, I think, not just for the bettors, but it has to be hard for you on the other side of the counter, and in particular the odds makers. Some of these games are kind of a guessing game to figure out who's going to play, who wants to be there, and all that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got these games where, take a look, say, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, for example. I mean, if guys are banged up in that game, do they really need to play? But other cases where guys are, they're competitors, they want to be out there. We talk like Julio Jones is a good example. I mean, he's got, I think, the rushing, the receiving, yardage in the season is up for grabs. That's kind of something at stake for him. So you figure he's been held out most of the week, but you figure he'll be out there. And you got other teams like, we'll touch on Buffalo, Miami. It just kind of teams are just scrapping them and still playing hard, and other teams who maybe have given up. Arizona, Seattle's a good example of that. I mean, Seattle's gearing up for the playoffs and stuff like that, but Arizona, just like you hear things out of Arizona, and just everything's still positive despite their record, having won 3 games on the season. They're still scrapping and playing hard, so it is very difficult. But you kind of have to. I mean, obviously, you respect the sharp money a whole lot, but you kind of have to be in tune in terms of just kind of like what's going on as a bettor, just looking at people's camps and how things are going. Miami, Buffalo, like I said, we'll touch about that one. We got, the story, with the head coach might be gone, the quarterback might be gone. Whereas Buffalo, they're just playing hard. They got a good young quarterback, and they're gearing up for next season already, I guess.
All right, so let's start with 304 Oakland taking on Kansas City. Chiefs, obviously something to play for here this week with the AFC West up for grabs. What's the sharp action in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Oakland got that big win the other night. It was kind of one of the, the sharps did get on Oakland last week. It was one of those kind of emotional things where you're looking at that could be like the last game for Oakland at home. So they kind of came up for that game at home to Denver and got the win last week. You're looking at that as well. It's like, wow, they should be playing for a draft spot, not for pleasing the fans. But Oakland got that win. That's one of those spots where you figure, if someone was going to give up on the season, that might have been a spot. We don't have action on the, sharp action on the side of this one, but I do have sharp action on the total. That came under 54.5. So sharp money on the Oakland KC game under 54.5. We're down to 52.5 right now. As you look at market wide, everyone's pretty much in the same number now, 52.5. I did get bet under 54.5. I think this number had opened even higher at 55.5 in some spots. Now again, kind of one of those things that you have to take into account, but also be wary of, is that these two teams, have played each other before, and we'll see lots of matchups in these division games where teams have played each other already. Now, this game, Kansas City and Oakland already played at Oakland. They put up 73 points. That was only a month ago. So, different situation in terms of this game. The Sharps are playing the under 54.5. Like I said, we're down to 52.5. My count, probably no surprise, just a wager count, just a slight tick of over 2. Count favoring the over about 2-1 right now. So just not a ton of action on the over, but it is going against the sharp action.
All right, let's go to game 311, 312 here. Detroit and Green Bay. Nothing for either one of these teams to play for except for pride. What's the sharp action in this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like people still, the public especially, just still get behind Green Bay. I mean, no matter what their season looks like, they're 6-8-1 on the season. Detroit's got 5 wins. But I got sharp money on this one on Detroit. I got public action going the other way on Green Bay. So the numbers really hasn't been moved a whole lot. Sharp money did come on Detroit, plus the 8. I know there is a couple spots out there at 7.5, but 7.5 and 8 is not really a big move unless you're prepared to go down to go down to 7. Again, I don't really like to use 7.5, dog 15 and stuff like that. So I'm sitting at 8 just because I got public money going the other way, but I do have sharp action, like I said, on Detroit plus the 8. My wager count is about 3-1 favoring Green Bay.
All right, so we'll move on from that game here to game 313, 314. Very interesting game. Jacksonville, that defense still playing hard, that offense still in shambles. Houston, obviously, a ton to play for here this weekend. They need to lock up the AFC South. Otherwise, things look a lot different for them than they did a couple of weeks ago. So what's going on with the sharp action for this game?
Yeah, it's one of those things where how high is high enough, and you don't want to throw out a bad number. The one trap that I think public bettors do get into sometimes is you want to bet on a team that has to win. I mean, betting on a team that has to win doesn't mean they're going to win, doesn't mean they're going to cover. This could be a case where, Houston might get the win, but I do have sharp money the other way. Sharp money came in on Jacksonville plus 7. And again, this number did open higher elsewhere. I think it was like 7.5 and 8. Fortunately, I didn't get hit there. So I did take money on Jacksonville plus 7. We're down to 6.5 right now, pretty much market wide the same way. Houston, again, no surprise, probably my wager count almost 2-1 favoring the Texans there. And yeah, I mean, it's a big game for them. Yes, they have to win this game. It's it's an important game for them. Jacksonville really has nothing to play for, but that's just it's just not going to stop a team from trying to win this one. And sharp money, like I said, maybe we just came out too high with that number, grabbing Jacksonville.
Yeah, it should be an interesting one, especially to see now what happens with this game. I mean, maybe Houston becomes a very popular teaser team. Maybe we see some people playing back now that it's 6.5. Should be an interesting game, to say the least. Game 317, 318, Atlanta and Tampa Bay. You referenced this game already. Neither one of these teams with anything to play for. I don't even know if pride is on the line here in this particular game, but we've seen some movement both on side and total, and one of these betting options also has sharp action.
Yeah, I mean, the Atlanta number did open around 1.5. We're down to 1 right now. I think there's even some 1.5 still out there. There's even some just pick -15s out there. So the spread has moved just a little bit. My wager count on the spread is about 2-1 favoring Tampa Bay. So I guess people find a little bit of value there. But I do have sharp money on this one on the total. This number's gone from 49.5 up to 51, even some 51.5s out there. So that was sharp money that drove that over 49.5 up to the 51 where we are right now. And again, I just get the feeling that the public's going to get on the over this one, as they tend to do. I know Tampa Bay people still remember how they used to play that high tempo game. Or like they did earlier in the season. The last few weeks, they've really slowed things down a lot. But I think this is one of those games where just it's the opponent is going to kind of force them to play that high tempo game in Atlanta. I do expect Julio Jones to be out there. Like I said, he's been held out for most of the week, but he's got stuff to play for still in terms of yardage numbers. These two teams did meet earlier in the I think it was week 6. Of course, it was 34-29 for Atlanta. So they've already played this a game that went over this number. So I think this one's going to trend upwards as well.
All right, so we'll move to a game that you mentioned already here, Miami and Buffalo. And this is a game where, it looks like we're going to have the sharps and the public both going the same way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's funny. Like, Miami's one of those teams. I mean, they got the better record at 7-8. Buffalo's 5-10. But I think all the stuff kind of surrounding Miami is kind of driving this number in terms of where the public is going. You kind of would expect the public to go against a team like Buffalo, but they're against Miami here. Sharps are against Miami as well. So I got sharp money on Buffalo -3. This number's gone all the way, through 4 up to 4.5 right now where I am. I even see another book out there at -4.5, -115. So it looks like Buffalo money's, all one-sided. Wager count on this one is about 2-1 favoring the Bills as well. And again, I think it's, bit of the, maybe the culture and mindset of teams going into this game. Like I said, with, Miami with Gase, he might be gone, their head coach. They're talking about Tannehill being gone, their quarterback as well. Whereas Buffalo just, they're kind of building for the future, and they've been playing hard. I mean, they've been playing hard all season long, I think. I mean, we remember way back when they went into Minnesota and absolutely crushed them as like a 16.5 point dog. These two teams have played that, already. That was at Miami, where it was a competitive game at 21-17. Miami got the win there, so I guess Buffalo's, probably expected to flip that this time around. They played, I think it was like earlier in December too, so not a whole lot long ago. But I think that just kind of the mentality and the feel of both teams has changed.
All right, we'll move down one spot here by rotation. Where the Sunday night football game, win and you're in. Indianapolis and Tennessee, game 321, 322. Looks like this one may also set up the same way with the sharps and the public on the same side.
Yeah, Colts. And again, I think, this from the sharp side of you, I just get the feeling, just knowing our customer base and the guy who played this game, it seems like it was a bit of a number grab. With Indianapolis -2. This number has gone up to -3, -120. Mostly public behind that. I've got a wager count of almost 3-1 on the Colts now. So the public is all behind the Colts. The question in terms of the money grab, or the price grab, if you will, on the Colts -2.5 is the whole question with Mariota, what he's going to do. So I think, if he, they find out that he is going to be playing, this number will drop back down to 3, and perhaps the guy will get off his bet, or still like, the fact that he's sitting under 3, sitting at Indianapolis -2.5. So like I said, I just, you have to have a good idea in terms of profiling your customers, what certain guys do. Some guys will grab a number and play back the other way. Other guys will just grab it thinking it's going to move, and other guys are just strictly on the sharp side. I think the guy who did play this one it looks like he's the kind of guy who does grab numbers. Indianapolis -2.5, of course, getting them below 3. If this one's sitting at 3 -120, where it is right now, obviously is a great bet. But it looks like Mariota might be in there. Again, my wager count is about 3-1 favoring the Colts right now. I think it's all kind of going the same way based on Mariota not being in there. If he turns out he is going to be in there, this number should go back down to 3.
Well, again, my apologies. Just check my internet signal. It is cutting out a little bit, so I apologize for our listeners out there if this segment has been a little bit choppy. One more game to touch on here, game 329, 330, Arizona and Seattle. Arizona, not a great look last week. Are we expecting something different this week?
We are. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, Arizona all season long, they've been one of those teams like that the Sharps have been finding value on. They just seem to be playing tough, generally speaking. And Seattle as well is one of those teams where the Sharps just generally seem to get the feeling that Seattle's just been overvalued. Again, I don't know if it's analytics guys or just numbers guys, math guys, situational guys, whatever. But in terms of matchups and stuff like that, Arizona plus 13.5 was a sharp play. Now, this line really hasn't moved. I think you're going to see it kind of tick down to 13 for sure. It'll probably hold there, though. I don't think it'll go below 13 just because I think the public money, as it is already, is betting Seattle. My wager count there is about 2-1 in favor of the Seahawks. And again, the Seattle team has a whole lot of positivity around it right now. They're doing quite well. They've won 4 of their past 5. They're in the playoffs and such. So all positivity around Seattle, and Arizona is one of those teams who just kind of looking for the next season. But it just, like, generally speaking, has been positive around Arizona. You hear stuff about them practicing hard. They're still playing hard. Yeah, they did get beat up last week by the Rams, and again, they haven't really they've shown their teeth every now and then. I mean, they're probably the team who got McCarthy fired in Green Bay. They hung real tough with Kansas City a few weeks ago as well. So Arizona, I think, is one of those scrappy teams, and just kind of the sharp money, I guess, just thinks this number was way too high, and they'll hold, they'll play inside this number. I don't think maybe the sharp guys are expecting Arizona to win this game outright, but definitely be competitive with Seattle. And again, it's kind of a trend all season long that the sharps just seem to think that Seattle's overvalued.
Well, we will continue to have Brent here through the NFL playoffs and also touch on the Super Bowl and Super Bowl props and things like that with him. So don't worry, the odds report's not going anywhere, even though the NFL regular season is wrapping up and most of the bowl games will also be done here by the time we chat with Brent again. But Brent, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks again for having me on, Adam.